Welcome to Speak Peak English. Today we are going to practice English with the story, My First Day Abroad. We'll explore new vocabulary related to travel, emotions, and new experiences as we follow along. This is a wonderful opportunity to improve your listening and speaking skills while diving into an exciting and heartfelt journey of stepping into the unknown. Let's get started and enjoy the story. Listen carefully. My first day abroad. It was a crisp morning when my flight touched down at Heathrow Airport in London. The hum of the engines faded, and as I stepped off the plane, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was my first time traveling outside my home country, and I was finally here, alone, in a place I had only seen in movies and brochures. The moment I walked through the bustling airport, I was surrounded by a whirlwind of accents and languages. Signs with words like arrivals, baggage claim, and customs guided me forward, but they seemed overwhelming in my tired state. I clutched my passport and tried to look confident, even though my heart raced. "Next," called the immigration officer, a stern-looking man with glasses. As I handed over my passport, I wondered if he could sense how inexperienced I felt. To my relief, he stamped it without too many questions and waved me through. That little stamp felt like an entry into a new world. Outside the terminal, the cool air hit my face, and the city was alive. Red buses zipped by, people hustled to taxis, and the sound of wheels dragging luggage across the pavement filled the air. I took a deep breath and found my way to the train station, trying to remember all the advice my friends had given me about staying alert in a foreign city. The train ride to central London was magical. I watched buildings, parks, and houses blur past, their architecture so different from back home. When I stepped off the train at Victoria Station, the real adventure began. Everything felt larger than life. The high ceilings, the fast-walking crowd, and the smell of fresh pastries from nearby cafes. I realized I was hungry. I walked into a small bakery and tried to order something. "Could I get a croissant and coffee, please?" I asked nervously. The cashier smiled and replied, "That's £5.50. I stared blankly for a second. How much was that in my currency? Realizing I had no idea, I simply handed her a £10 note, feeling like I had given her a fortune. She handed me the change and a warm croissant that tasted like heaven. Next, I had to find my hotel. My phone's GPS pointed me in one direction, but the streets were a maze. I walked past rows of brick houses and tiny gardens, feeling lost and slightly panicked. Finally, I stopped a man walking his dog. "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the Bloomsbury Hotel?" I asked. He smiled and pointed me down the street, even walking a few steps with me to make sure I knew where to go. When I reached my hotel room, I sank into the soft bed, staring at the ceiling. The day had been long and filled with small victories, finding my way, talking to strangers, and surviving on my own. As I looked out the window at the city lights, I realized something important. I had started a journey not just to explore a new place, but to discover a stronger version of myself. That first day in London taught me to embrace uncertainty and trust that every step, no matter how small, was part of the adventure. I fell asleep smiling, ready for the days to come. After listening to the story, I'm sure you noticed how exciting and emotional the journey in my first day abroad was. What did you think of the challenges she faced and the way she embraced new experiences in a completely unfamiliar place? How about you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's explore some new vocabulary related to travel, emotions, and stepping out of your comfort zone. From the story, to enhance our English skills, it's time for word exploration. 1. Whirlwind. Definition: a situation or series of events that happens very quickly and is full of excitement or confusion. Example from the story: I was surrounded by a whirlwind of accents and languages. Example from real life: starting a new job can feel like a whirlwind of meetings, tasks, and names to remember. 2. Overwhelming. Definition: something that is very intense, strong, or difficult to handle. Example from the story: the signs seemed overwhelming in my tired state. Example from real life: the amount of homework before the exams felt overwhelming, so I planned a study schedule. 3. Nervousness. Definition: the feeling of being worried, anxious, or uncertain about something. Example from the story: I clutched my passport and tried to look confident, even though my heart raced with nervousness. Example from real life: before her speech at the wedding, Emma felt a wave of nervousness, but delivered it beautifully. 4. Confidence. Definition: the feeling of trust in oneself, one's abilities, or one's decisions. Example from the story: I tried to look confident, even though my heart raced. Example from real life: with enough practice, you'll gain the confidence to speak English fluently. 5. Hustling. Definition: moving quickly and with purpose, often in a busy or energetic manner. Example from the story: the moment I walked through the hustling airport. Example from real life: the students were hustling to finish their assignments before the deadline. Now we've reached the final round. Let's practice both listening and speaking skills together with a repeat after me session. Ready? Let's get started. My first day abroad. It was a crisp morning when my flight touched down at Heathrow Airport in London. The hum of the engines faded, and as I stepped off the plane, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was my first time traveling outside my home country, and I was finally here, alone, in a place I had only seen in movies and brochures. The moment I walked through the bustling airport, I was surrounded by a whirlwind of accents and languages. Signs with words like arrivals, baggage claim, and customs guided me forward, but they seemed overwhelming in my tired state. I clutched my passport and tried to look confident, even though my heart raced. "Next," called the immigration officer, a stern-looking man with glasses. As I handed over my passport, I wondered if he could sense how inexperienced I felt. To my relief, he stamped it without too many questions and waved me through. That little stamp felt like an entry into a new world. Outside the terminal, the cool air hit my face, and the city was alive. Red buses zipped by, people hustled to taxis, and the sound of wheels dragging luggage across the pavement filled the air. I took a deep breath and found my way to the train station, trying to remember all the advice my friends had given me about staying alert in a foreign city. The train ride to central London was magical. I watched buildings, parks, and houses blur past, their architecture so different from back home. When I stepped off the train at Victoria Station, the real adventure began. Everything felt larger than life. The high ceilings, the fast-walking crowd, and the smell of fresh pastries from nearby cafes. I realized I was hungry. I walked into a small bakery and tried to order something. "Could I get a croissant and coffee, please?" I asked nervously. The cashier smiled and replied, "That's £5.50. I stared blankly for a second. How much was that in my currency? Realizing I had no idea, I simply handed her a £10 note, feeling like I had given her a fortune. She handed me the change and a warm croissant that tasted like heaven. Next, I had to find my hotel. My phone's GPS pointed me in one direction, but the streets were a maze. I walked past rows of brick houses and tiny gardens, feeling lost and slightly panicked. Finally, I stopped a man walking his dog. "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the Bloomsbury Hotel?" I asked. He smiled and pointed me down the street, even walking a few steps with me to make sure I knew where to go. When I reached my hotel room, I sank into the soft bed, staring at the ceiling. The day had been long and filled with small victories, finding my way, talking to strangers, and surviving on my own. As I looked out the window at the city lights, I realized something important. I had started a journey not just to explore a new place, but to discover a stronger version of myself. That first day in London taught me to embrace uncertainty and trust that every step, no matter how small, was part of the adventure. I fell asleep smiling, ready for the days to come. That wraps up today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning with the story, My First Day Abroad. If you liked this session, please consider liking and subscribing for more content. Remember, practice makes perfect, so keep exploring and practicing your English. Until next time, stay motivated and take care.